Thank you, Bill Quist. That was something. A couple of weeks ago, while I was still in bed, I heard some birds outside chirping, and it was a welcome sound. And I said, well, maybe spring is on its way. I'm not sure I was right, but, but it was a beautiful sound to hear. Then a couple of days later, I was out front in the yard, and I saw a little bird. I don't know what kind it was, and he flew away. And then another day, another one. I said, "Oh, let me try to pull out my iPad and get a picture of them." But by the time I did that, and I think one time it was not on, and it takes my little thing a bit to get up, like me, to really get turned on and begin the day. And so by the time I was ready, it had gone. This happened twice. Oh, and then it's gone. So I've been dealing with birds, but then this past week, I was at my office at Pacific School of Religion, and it was one of those days when I really felt as though I should have stayed at home. The weather was just pounding, the rain, the gusts were so on, but it was chapel. And we've been encouraged to come to chapel to support the students and others. And so I made my trip to PSR. And at one point, it seemed as though there was a lull in the rain. And I said, well, maybe this is a good time for me to leave and try to get home. It is not pouring like it was just a few minutes ago. And then I saw this blackbird, and all of a sudden the whole thing changed. It was a large blackbird, and it had this little twig in its beak. There was something actually kind of regal about it. And it was sitting on this branch. And I said, is the bird trying to feed somebody or what? I said, it's just some bird ought to get out of the weather. It is there, and with this thing in its mouth, and the storm is raging, the tree is moving. What's wrong with this bird? This is bird brain. That's what I said, to be honest. Doesn't it know better? Why is it trying to build a nest in that swaying, rain-soaked tree? It needs to hunker down. Find some place of security, I said. A few days later, I realized that the bird knew exactly what it was doing. I did not know. Maybe there were little birds on the way. Maybe the birds had already been born. I don't know. But the bird was doing what it was instinctively programmed to do. Animals often know far more about life and are more attuned to life than we are. So they can sense earthquakes, and there are many ways that there's an intelligence there that we need to take much more seriously than we do. It was led to find shelter, to find security and protection when a storm of life was raging. And that's a message to us, to find security, a place of refuge when the storms of life are raging within us, when we've got all kinds of problems, all kinds of contradictions. How do we find a place, a refuge where we can strengthen ourselves and at times have peace? How do we find that? It also told me that we cannot hide ourselves when storms are raging, when life is throwing all kinds of curves at us. And our problem is, or one of the problems is, we too often rely on ourselves. We have been programmed to realize that I have to do it. It's my problem. I have to solve my own problem. And that denies the whole idea of community. Why do we think others are here if not for us? They are agents of the universe, of God. So you are not alone. Learn how to rest in the mystery. Learn to call on others because we are connected to the network that birthed all of this. So we are connected ourselves to each other and to the birds. It is a tragic mistake when we try to do it by ourselves. We are interdependent and enmeshed in the web of life. Why we don't know this instinctively? Maybe because we've been socialized out of that understanding. We need to learn instinctively that security comes with resting in the infrastructure of life. The universe is not static, motionless, stationary, or fixed. It is not. Rather, it is dynamic, changing, evolving, engaging, and we are in partnership with the universe. It is evolving. We are evolving. We're not isolated from it. And we can call upon it and its agents, you, me, each one of us, for strength, companionship, and wisdom sufficient for our needs. And when we give ourselves to the all life, we give ourselves permission to accept the inexhaustible resources of life. We expand. We realize, in fact, that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, and we are part of that. We are part of those that dwell therein. The blackbird knew this instinctively. So often we must learn it. I'd heard a sermon months and months and months ago, and I was really intrigued by it. And I sort of found a place where some of the sermon had come. And I want to read part of it to you. It's just very intriguing to me. Again, it's about another bird, or birds, geese. And the writer says that geese do not typically fly individually, but tend to thrive in a flock or family. Geese fly in a V formation because it distributes the hardship of travel. Sharing the load makes it lighter for those out front, in front, and more vulnerable to the resistance and the challenges of life. So the leadership, those out front, are rotated periodically. And it also encourages strange leadership or submerged leadership to become visible. That's the way it is in life and community. Sometimes you have a leader out front who's taking everything, all the complaints, all the pressures. The geese know better. They know that there are times when that leader needs to move back and others come forth. It is a way of developing new leadership. Some people have all kinds of talents, but they never come forth unless somebody asks them to help share in the program, in the community, in the church. And we see all kinds of leadership coming forward. I think some of you have that experience, even here, of being shy. Your talents submerged. We don't know your talents until you're asked to do something. And you have stepped up remarkably. And you've shown us who you are, what you're made of, your talents. And you enrich the congregation as a result of doing that. So what a beautiful idea to have this leadership rotated every few minutes so that, she says, so that the geese can fly long distances without rest. What a beautiful and sensitive idea this is. Let's distribute the leadership and challenges so that we may journey long before we come to our rest. The easiest position is at the rear of the V. And what I mean by that is that the stronger geese allow the young, the weak, the old birds to occupy these less arduous positions. And if a goose becomes too ill, too tired to continue, it is never left alone or abandoned. I thought about this when I thought about you, Dr. Benton, and your work in so many places. I think about some of the places I've gone, the nursing homes and whatever, and there are people just left and abandoned. When our friend who was a member of Bill Wade was in such a facility in Alameda, I went there to visit him. And sometimes I was the only person, he was the only person with a visitor. And I asked about that. And people told me how people just dropped off at times. Family doesn't come, friends don't come. That doesn't happen with the geese. When one is sick or fallen, the other follows, accompanies, and works with a goose until it's able to rejoin, to build its strength back. And it says this social order greatly contributes to the survival and well-being of their flock. This care for the weak, the young, the elderly. So that the honking, when you hear the geese honk, and this is so interesting to me, it is believed to be the method of the strong, encouraging the weaker birds to continue. Honk! I never thought of honking in this way as a method of the stronger birds encouraging weaker ones to don't feel weary, not to feel small or suffer alone, but to keep striving toward that collective goal with our dedicated support, with the support of the others in the community. Isn't that our calling, folks? Are we not to provide nutrition for the hungry and therefore malnourished people in our society, and to take care of the sick, to visit the prisoners, to have compassion for all of those on the edges of life? Are we not to support their being revived, renewed, their coming alive again? Well, when I thought about this, I felt that those geese were real disciples of the one from Nazareth. They do not talk theologically about what it means to be a follower. They just do what is required to be a follower. They learn that their personal efforts are multiplied, yielding dividends, tangible and intangible, for the entire goose community and its future. Adrienne Marie Brown writes in Emerging Strategy, birds don't make a plan to migrate, raising resources to fund their way, packing for scarce times, mapping out their pit stops. They feel a call in their bodies and they must go. And they follow it, responding to each other, each bringing their adaptations. She says there is an art to flocking, staying separate enough not to crowd each other, aligned enough to maintain a shared direction, and cohesive enough to always move toward each other. Destiny is a calling that creates a beautiful journey. Fellowship Church is like this journey. Many of us have come to this place because we felt something. We felt a need, that we felt there was something beyond us with which we needed to connect, beyond the world, the little world that we had occupied. We weren't quite sure what it was, but something led us to seek what I would call now this greater community, to seek this more than what our lives were, what we had been experiencing. It was what Dr. Howard Thurman would call the hunger of the heart that led us from where we were to this place, this hunger for connection with reality that we cannot define. He talks about trying to find the scent of the other. Perhaps we could say that it was a hunger of the heart for brothers and sisters that we had never met, but we sensed were part of our family and journey. Brothers and sisters, I didn't know you. I didn't know you. But at the same sense, I sense that there were people out there who were part of my family. You are part of my family, companions, sojourners. And that has enriched me. It has helped me to grow. It has helped me to find my own sense of purpose in life. What Tagore says really does help. He says, we are like a straight line in a poem, whichever feels that it rhymes with another line and must find it or miss its own fulfillment. The quest for the unattained is the great impulse in man, which brings forth all his best creations. Man seems deeply to be aware of a separation at the root of his being. He cries to be led across it to a union, and somehow he knows that it is love which can lead him to a love which is final. I am not sure what we can become as the Church for the Fellowship of All Peoples. We know, however, that life is calling us to be steady with what we are, and from that steadiness to move or to be open confidently into life, what life may call us to be. This is not anything to be taken superficially. Our legacy, and it's an important legacy, and I want to say that. And there are people who admire what we're doing all across the nation. Our legacy is one of an audacious group of people. We're talking about the founders, the charter members, who dared challenge the racial, national, gender, cultural, and religious barriers that separated people and therefore segregated them. This is our legacy. In 1944, there was no church like ours. They were segregated, denying community, denying our relationship across these barriers. That's part of our legacy. And we've got a lot to deal with as we go forth. For we are witnessing Machiavellian, evil measures being put forth to erase and exterminate people. I'm very concerned about what is happening, these laws being passed to destroy transgender people and others. You read some of them, you hear, and you can't believe that people even think along these lines. You go, how did anybody ever come up with that thought? And then how did someone else agree with the thought and others agree with the thought enough to get legislation introduced and passed? We are an alternative to that. We were called into being to see, to demonstrate actually, that people from diverse walks of life in religious community could develop and sustain the type of religious community that would upend those barriers and reveal our essence as individuals and a community. That is part of who we are. We decided not just confront, but to develop. And this is a positive thing. We develop an alternative to what was going on out there. And that needs to happen again. We need to be an alternative community. Finally, Thurman, in his book, Footprints of a Dream, where he describes Fellowship Church, its origins, and so on. And this is one of my favorite passages because it speaks not just to me personally, but it speaks always to our community. The movement of the Spirit of God in the hearts of men, people, I would say today, often calls them to act against the spirit of their times, or it causes them to anticipate a spirit which is yet in the making, planting seeds for what must be. In a moment of dedication, they are given wisdom and courage to dare a deed that challenges and to kindle a hope that inspires. Let us remember the insight from Adrienne Maree Brown. The birds just go when they hear the call to migrate in their bodies. And if you hear us honking, know that we're just saying to you, lean on us. Keep moving forward, for we've got your back. Could I hear a honk? Honk! Another one, honk! Another one, honk! Thank you. Amen.